So, a film critic I really like said back when the original Harry Potter series was coming out that there's nothing more useless than a film critic viewing a new Harry Potter movie because there's nothing really to say. You know, the people who love it are going to go see it no matter what, and no amount of criticism is going to deter them. And, pardon me, sorry. And I find that the same is kind of true for Marvel films. In that you feel pretty useless as even an amateur film critic like myself trying to critique a Marvel movie because they're fucking good. You know, and how many times can you just kind of go over the same thing? No matter what you think of Disney or Marvel or the overabundance of superhero movies these days, the thing you have to admit is that Disney has this Marvel Cinematic Universe shit down to a science. And it just seems so effortless. And especially these ones that you kind of feel they have to get right. They get it right. And so it should not come to a surprise to anyone that they got this right. They got it really right. I really dug this movie. And this is one I've been waiting for because I said this about Spider-Gwen when I went and saw Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, whatever you want to call her, Carol Danvers, is one of my favorite comic book heroes. I love her. I preferred her a little bit more when she was Miss Marvel, honestly, just because the outer space stuff in Captain Marvel I'm not a big fan of. But I love the character. And so this was a character that way back when they said they were going to do this, I was like, yes, on it. And naturally, it carries the extra weight of being the first Marvel Cinematic Universe film with a female protagonist. So there's a lot that, riding on this one. And boom. I mean, yeah. Are you surprised? It's great. It's a great movie. I thought I was a little surprised because actually I'm not surprised. I think I understand why. I read a review, a very quick review, and I try not to do that but it popped up on Yahoo on my my homepage, and it was like the critics were like, it's boring and it's dumb and you bleh. And I can see where that comes from because it has a very different feel to it than any of the past Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. It almost feels like it's not. Even though it is chocked full with references and callbacks and setups, because it's technically a prequel to all the other movies. So I can see why people might think that. And it took me a little while to get into it as well. But once I was in, and it was not going away. But yeah, it has a very different kind of feel, a very different kind of formula. And I think that might be why it's throwing people off, is the Marvel films have a formula. Even great ones like Black Panther, but they have a formula. This one, because part of that formula is gone, there is no superfluous romantic interest kind of fueling the whole thing. They kind of had to redo the formula, finally. And so it's not fitting into that mold that we've gotten kind of used to with these films. And I think that's for the better. I think it's great. And it's a very different kind of origin story than any of the ones that we've seen before. So where to begin with? Let's talk about the story first, then we can talk about some other things. I really liked the story of this one. because it is an origin story and an introduction to us of Carol Danvers and Captain Marvel. I like that they took some major changes to the established origin story. For those who don't know, let's just do this real quick. For those who don't know, Captain Marvel was originally a dude. No surprise. And Carol Danvers was his Lois Lane, his girlfriend or his female acquaintance, whatever. She was the Haley Atwell, the Natalie Portman, the Gwyneth Paltrow of the Captain Marvel comics. And then in one issue, there's an accident and she absorbs some of his powers and becomes Miss Marvel. And eventually they killed off Captain Marvel and she became the new Captain Marvel after a very long time of going through several other nicknames and code names and fairly icky history. The comic book Carol Danvers took a long time to get to where she is now, and some of her storyline arcs, buddy, they were questionable. If you don't believe that, check out, there's several videos online. Check out Movie Bob's big picture stuff about Avengers 200. And check out just how fucked up comic books can be when it comes to female heroes. Because it's a fucked up story, and not in a good way. But anyway, so they had to make some major changes to the story. So she is not Captain Marvel's girlfriend in this one. She's always Carol Danvers, and the whole thing is that she's an agent of the Kree we've met, or they've talked about from the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, who has no memory of her past, one of those, and through circumstances ends up back on Earth they never give an exact year, but in the mid-90s, I would say, and chasing a bunch of shape-shifting aliens called Skrulls, best known from the Fantastic Four comics, around. She meets a young Nick Fury, a young Agent Coulson, and is trying to piece back the parts of her life together to kind of figure out what the hell's going on. So it's a story, again, very unlike any other Marvel origin, because this time she starts out with her powers, and the mystery is how she got them, as opposed to a lot of other ones where we see them getting their powers, or we know where their powers come from. And again, because there is no forced love interest, there's not that superfluous character who's just there to be the girl, it means the dynamic has changed up. One of the things I really love about this movie is it is a great buddy film. The chemistry between Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson is just fantastic. They quip and they work off each other great. And in fact, the whole cast does that. It's a really good cast that really works well off each other, and because of that, I think we get more character depth out of all characters in this one than we get out of a lot of other Marvel films, because in those they're usually interested in building up the hero, and all the side characters are kind of just the side characters. They don't get story arcs. But here, it really does feel like we have a whole cast of flushed out characters. So that's great. Brie Larson is magnificent as Captain Marvel. And what I like is, one of the reasons I like the character from the comics is her wit, her humor, her badassness. And I wasn't skeptical when they cast Brie Larson. But I hadn't been real impressed with her in the movies I had seen her in. But she pulls it off. She shows off those acting chops here. Playing everything and playing it really well. What's funny is that because she's a female comic book character, of course, Carol Danvers is always drawn very statuesque, very tall, very full-figured, and Brie Larson is a smaller person. She's tiny. And I think that was a good choice, because I love the idea, kind of going to a Yoda thing, of all of this power, probably the most powerful character in the Marvel Universe that we've met, is in this tiny frame. Not even, I'm not even trying to go into it's in a woman, but it's in a tiny person, you know. But she really pulls it off and does a great job. Samuel L. Jackson, I think this is the most fun he's had in a Marvel film. You can tell he's having fun in all of them playing Nick Fury, but this is pre-uber badass Nick Fury. So there's new aspects to his personality. We get to see a more fun-loving, a more easygoing kind of Nick Fury, which is really nice and flushes the character out. The other real great performance goes to, and I do not know the actor's name, so I apologize, to the actress playing Carol's best friend on Earth, and I can't even remember the character's name now. But there is just some really great acting and some great line deliveries in that character. And the actor, and again, I so apologize for not pulling her name out, just is really playing. Again, everybody plays off each other so well, and it creates really great characters. The only thing I would say story-wise that doesn't click as well is they set up that Carol is part of a Kree strike team, that includes Jude Law and some other characters. And really none of them are very distinct at all. There's just not a real great... Actually, on a poplar. It's dark as hell out here. Anyway, they don't create a really sharp distinction between those characters, except for, they all look different. The only one you kind of get aside from aside from Jude Law, is Damon Hunsu, because we remember him from Guardians of the Galaxy. The story also has some nice twists and turns. A lot of them, obviously, you're going to see coming. But they make the story more interesting, and since the story is really about Carol Danvers finding herself and learning who she is and all that, you don't mind, at least I didn't, that the twists weren't really as twisty as they were hoping for. But I think they did a good job, especially playing with their advertising and playing with preconceived notions of the Marvel Universe that comic book fans know. There are certain characters and certain races we know are bad. Okay? So, but then again, if you're a comic fan, you remember the Kree Skrull War and all that. Anyway, is there anything wrong with the movie? They took a lot of design and music cues from Star Wars, it felt like the design of the early 90s Quinjet, and a lot of the music sounded very Star Wars. The Quinjet looks like one of the trooper ships from the Star Wars prequels. I don't know if that's a bad thing, it was just kind of distracting. But this film, I guess the only real problem I have with this movie, honestly, two problems, is that it has the same problem of Bumblebee. And that is, it's a period piece. It's weird to think of the 90s as a period. But it is now. But it does the same thing that Bumblebee did, and it seems to think that all of the 90s happened all at once. Since they don't give us a specific date, it was pre-Mallrats, we know that. It was before Mallrats came out. So it really does feel like they're trying to cram all of the 90s into, and drop as many 90s references as they can. Speaking of Mallrats, getting off of the thing that, things I didn't like about the movie, I gotta talk about two things I loved. And they're small, but boy are they beautiful. So as we all know, Stan Lee, the godfather of Marvel, passed away last year, and we kind of know we're getting to the end of his run of cameos. I'm hoping there's one in Avengers Endgame. I really am, just because I think that would be a great send-off. I don't know if he filmed one for them before he passed. I hope, since they were filming both of them at the same time. But anyway, I digress. But his cameo in this is really great. It's small. I'm not going to ruin it, but there's a look that he and Carol Danvers give each other during the cameo, and it I don't know, it feels like a goodbye. I don't know if we're just seeing that because we know, but it really, I don't know, there's just something final there, and in a good way, in a beautiful way. And I've got to say, I hope they keep this for Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home. They redo the opening Marvel scroll, the Marvel Studios logo, as a tribute. It's beautiful, and it really, I'm sitting there going, I'm crying manly tears, basically. But I loved it. It was really touching and really great, and I'm glad they did that. You knew they were going to do something, and they're probably going to do something for Endgame, and probably for Spider-Man, since those were his, Spider-Man was like his big thing. But we'll see. If not, then this is a good way to go out. Anyway, so the only other thing I didn't like, I'm not going to spoil it. So in proper prequel fashion, we get the origins of a lot of things, including how Nick Fury lost his eye. And I'm gonna tell you, for me, it was not what I was hoping. I'd always hoped, even though I knew back in the day when they did these, that Marvel, Disney and whatnot didn't have the rights to the X-Men, so I knew it was a long shot. But the thing that was got me is the 3 claw marks going down his eye. And I always thought that was a nod to the Ultimate Nick Fury, which is what the Sam Jackson one is based on, the Ultimate line, where he lost his eye to Wolverine, clearly. And I always wanted there to be a line in there in one of the movies about how'd you lose your eye, a particularly nasty Wolverine, I always wanted something like that. And now that Disney owns Fox and thus has the X-Men franchise, I always wanted there to be a thing where it turns out he did lose his eye to Wolverine. So that's a personal thing, but not a thing that ruins the movie. The movie is great. So the question I think people are going to ask, because this is the second superhero movie with a female protagonist, so it loses being the first one to Wonder Woman, clearly. But I think that this is by far a superior movie to Wonder Woman. Captain Marvel is not as iconic as Wonder Woman, so the Wonder Woman movie always had that going for it. No matter what, it always had that iconic feel to it, because she was one of those characters that people wanted to see and should have been on the silver screen a lot sooner than she was. Marvel doesn't quite have that luxury. All of its iconic female characters are part of teams. And recently they were teams that Disney and Marvel didn't have the rights to. So finding a female character that could lead the movie was difficult. But I think all in all, this one is a better movie. It's better structured. It's just more competent. The characters are more likable. The characters actually have chemistry. Again, there's no shoehorned romantic subplot weaseled in there. The story, like I say, it's better structured. I just think all around it's better than Wonder Woman. So if you're wondering if that's the question in your mind, because it was kind of the question with mine going in, is it a better movie? And all around, I say, yeah, it's a better movie. Not just a better superhero movie, but it is a better movie, period. I also like that this one, because the problems you run into with a film like this, with Marvel's first female protagonist, kind of the same thing that they had to be careful of with Black Panther, which they avoided and I thought was wonderful. You got to be careful of getting up on your soapbox. You know, I think you can have a strong message and inspire people and hit your target audience without getting up there and becoming preachy about it. And I think a lot of films with messages or morals or whatever become very preachy, and it immediately makes people go, well, I just don't want to listen to other people preach at me. This film does not have that problem. It deals with everything. It treats Carol not, in my opinion, I think the best thing it does is it doesn't treat it as this is a woman superhero. It treats it as this is a superhero. It doesn't qualify it. And I think that was a brilliant move on their part. Not making it a big deal that, oh, it's a woman. Nobody at any time goes, oh, a woman has all this power? You know, it's in the subtext. But it's not, and I think that's great. They keep it in the subtext, which is phenomenal. And I think, therefore, they don't run into the preachiness that message films tend to have. I think that's really wise of them. They did a good job. So, again, it's a Marvel film. Did you expect anything less? I was a little worried. Again, I shouldn't read reviews, but I was concerned. But it really, I think it lived up to the hype and then some. So, final grade for Captain Marvel. I'm gonna go a solid A. Solid A, not an A+, not an A-. I think the only thing keeping it from being an A+, honestly, I think if this movie had come out before Wonder Woman, I think this would have been an A+, because I think it would have had that impact of this is really important. And as I was coming out, the number of people and the number of women and young girls going in with the Captain Marvel logo on, it's clearly important. It's clearly going to be important, and that's great to see. But I think it kind of, it lost a little bit in that, the impact zone. But then again, they took their time and actually made a good movie instead of an average one. So, what do you think? But I think a solid A for Captain Marvel. It may be one of my favorite Marvel films. I don't know. I don't know how to rank these things. So I dig it. I dug it, and I think you'll dig it too. I hope you dig it too. So that's it for this one. So as of now, or as of a few hours ago, I'm on spring break, baby. Kick the feet up. Don't go to work. It's fantastic. My alarms are off, and I'm not wearing anything with my school's name on it for the next week. Now, my hope is to spend some of that time at the movies. The sad part is as I'm looking at what's out there, there's not a lot I want to see. There's nothing really I want to see. There's one other movie I wanted to see that came out this week, and it doesn't look like it got into any theaters. So, so I hope to do a couple of other these during the week. If not, then I'll catch you next weekend. So here's to spring break. Here's to a great movie. Please go see this, even though I know you're going to. And as always, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies.